Hello, Power Up Nation. This is Thriving Thursday, where we talk about business. I'm going to give you sales tips, marketing tips, and a few other tips, such as good customer service tips and teamwork. So with that being said, let's talk about how to make selling easier and more consistent. It doesn't matter what anyone says. It's funny when I hear people who are in business talk about how much they hate sales. They're actually kind of building up a wall, a mental wall that's stopping them from learning what they need to learn and from being receptive to the right kind of customers for their business. When you don't have the right kind of customers for your business, you're not going to make any money. And better yet, if you don't have any customers, you really won't make any money. All right. So if you're not making any money in your business, it's not a business. Okay. So that's part of being in business. It's going to allow you to bring in revenues so that you can, sustain the business as well as fund your lifestyle. So what I want to do is I'm going to share with you how you can make selling a lot easier, how you can make it more consistent. Now, first of all, I'm going to give you a very simple answer about how to be successful in sales. And here it is. Success in sales really begins in the mind. It is all about your mindset. Now, I know you're thinking, oh my goodness, not this mindset stuff again. Hey, listen, you have to get used to it if you're going to be successful in business, actually in life. How you think, what you think about, you bring about. You guys may have heard that quote before. I don't know who said it. I just know I like it. So what you think about, you bring about. And the thing about sales is that sales actually, it begins in your mind. And you have to, first of all, embrace the idea that selling is a good thing. That's the first thing. This isn't bad because I'm offering a service. I'm offering a product. And a lot of times when I listen to some people who talk about sales, they make the customer seem like the adversary. Okay, they're going to try to get something for nothing, but I got them and this kind of thing. And oh boy, I out negotiated them and things like that. Okay. Always keep in mind that you are there to serve. And that does not mean you give your service away. Doesn't mean you give your products away. Just keep in mind you're there to serve, and don't turn your customer into an adversary, because if you do, you're going to always be struggling for customers, because you're looking, when you turn your customer into an adversary, what you're doing is coming from actually a position of lack. Okay, so perhaps we'll talk about that another day, because I want to explain to you how to make selling easier and make it more consistent. As I said, it does begin in the mind. And the key is to know what type of customer you desire. So that's why I'm telling you it begins in the mind. What kind of customer do you want to attract into your business? And when you know the kinds of customers that you want to deal with, then the object of the game is to write it down. I don't care if you put it in your computer. I use my computer for a lot of things, but sometimes I love good old fashioned pen and paper. And that's because writing actually engages your brain more. And so when you are actually taking the time to write things out on paper, it increases your brain activity. So this is why I like to use good old fashioned pen and paper or pencil and paper. So it's important that you take the time to write out what kind of customers you desire. And that might seem like a small thing, but it isn't. No matter what business I've been in, so I've been in real estate. If you guys have been listening to this podcast, I've shared a few real estate stories. So I've been in real estate. I've been in multi-level marketing, and I've shared some stories about that as well. And also now I have Power Up Nation, the company. And in each one of these companies, I took the time to create what I call a prospect profile sheet. So I took the time to write out what types of customers I wanted to work with in my business. And I can tell you, when you take the time to do that, you've identified already, this goes beyond target market. So target market can sometimes, I guess, be first. In other words, I want to work with women over 40 or something like that. If, and that's not necessarily my target market. That's a big portion of it though. But hypothetically, if I were to say something like that, I have to narrow it down even further because, without me identifying the characteristics and the traits of this particular person, which in business is sometimes called your avatar, without specifically identifying the kinds of people I want to work with, then I can attract quite a few women over 40. Okay, that's not hard to do. So when it comes to you, positioning yourself to make selling easier, then you want to identify the types of customers that you desire. So you want to take a look at your product, know how much it costs, and product or service, know how much you're going to charge, what it costs, and then you want to determine the qualities, the characteristics and the traits of the people that can pay, the people that actually need what you have to offer, but people who are also willing to pay for what you have to offer because they can pay. Now, I'm going to give you an example. There was a lady I was coaching, and it just so happens she was in real estate. And so one of the things that she wanted to do is she wanted to help people who didn't have good credit. Okay, they had, well, I wanted to say challenging credit, but the credit was not good. Let's just say it like that. And they didn't have good credit, and they didn't have their down payment money. Now, as a new person in real estate, I would not have suggested that to anyone. However, one of the things that happened is she kept wondering, she attracted quite a few people, but she kept wondering how come she hadn't made a sale. 6 months had gone by, 7 months had gone by, still no sale. And so the thing is, matter of fact, more than a year went by and no sale. But she kept wondering, she says, I'm getting a lot of people who are interested. And I said, what's the problem? Which I already knew the problem. What's the problem? None of them can buy. Well, it's because her prospect profile that she had created, let's say unknowingly, knowingly and unknowingly. In other words, she knew the kind of people she wanted to work with, but the unknown part was that she didn't pay attention to how you match your product to your customer. That, okay, if someone wants to buy a house, there either needs to be a program that doesn't care about their credit or their down payment, and they're just going to put them in the house and let them figure it out later. There needs to be a program like that. I've never seen one. There are some buyer assistance programs, but I've never seen one like that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I've just never seen it. And there either needs to be a program like that, or you just have to go and find the right prospect to match the product. So it's kind of both sides. So whatever business you're in, if you have a service, you need to match your business to your product. For example, if you are, let's say, a bookkeeper, or you have an accounting business, and I get it, those are not the same thing, but they both deal with helping people keep up with how much they're spending and how much they're bringing in and all of that, not just for business, but perhaps for the personal life as well. But at the end of the day, those people have to pay you. So if you want to bring in people that actually don't bring in that much money, aren't making that much money, and they can't afford what your most basic fee is, probably not a good prospect for you. So what you do is you find yourself connecting to a lot of people, but none of them can buy what you have to offer. So let's go back to the real estate lady. So when I was coaching her, what I did is I gave her a copy of my prospect profile sheet. And I said, okay, fill this in. And there were a lot of blank spaces. So when we got back together the following week, she said, had a hard time filling this in because what's on here, a lot of my customers wouldn't fit. And I said, okay, here's how this has to work. What you want to do is you need to find a customer. You need to get paying customers, people that can afford what you have to offer. And when you find people that can afford what you have to offer, you match those people to the product. So in other words, do you want to deal with first-time home buyers who have their down payment money, or first-time home buyers that have good credit and may need down payment assistance? Okay, so perhaps you should start there. Now, if you have the soft heart, and it's, of course, everybody needs help. If you have the soft heart and you really want to help people that don't have money, then the object of the game is to first help the people that do make some money, and then create a program later for those that can't pay up front. And when it comes to, let's say, that's why we have now today's different, when it comes to products, selling your products and services as well. That's why we have different buy now, pay later types of companies like Klarna, where you can split the payments up over so many weeks. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to make sure, even under those programs, it's connected, I believe, to a bank account, to the person's bank account, because they need to make sure that that money's actually going to be in there. So the point that I'm making, if you want to make selling easier and more consistent, you need to find the right prospect for the right product, but also the right prospect for you. For example, as a business coach, there are different levels of business coaches. Some business coaches charge six figures right off the bat. I don't charge six figures right off the bat. Some charge 50,000, 40,000. And there are some that charge by the hour. I don't charge by the hour. I have a fee, that's a monthly fee. And so, but either way, in order to bring in customers consistently, we all have to know what kind of customer we're looking for. Again, that's probably your avatar. So if you haven't taken the time to identify what kind of customers that you're looking for, then it becomes a lot harder for you to, first of all, attract those customers. Secondly, to market to people who might be in that arena, in that target market. And thirdly, when you actually do get a customer, they're not a qualified customer, not just in terms of real estate, but in anything. As I said, I use the accountant or bookkeeper and different businesses. So this is how you want to solve that problem. So I would start step one. I would write out what type of customer I'm looking for. That's the first thing. So kind of like your avatar. I call it the prospect profile sheet. And I call it a prospect profile sheet because it's easier for me to think about the kind of customer that I want. It makes it a lot easier for me. And you want to write out that prospect profile sheet. You want to make sure that it matches, of course, the product that you're selling. You want to pay attention to the kind of income that the person needs to have. And once you're doing all of that, now it makes it a lot easier for you to sell. I know some people say, well, I'm a people person, so I'll just go out and I'll just, mix and mingle with people and hand out my business card. And you know what? That can work, but that's long term. Okay, that's long term. And not only that, it's a form of passive selling that really doesn't help you stand out in the mind of your customer. So when in your mindset, you accept the fact that, listen, I'm a quality salesperson who's delivering, whether it's a product or a service, who's delivering a quality product, and I'm going to give the best service possible. So now I'm looking for customers who can respect that. So when you start handing out your card, now you're able to present yourself and give what I call your little 30-second elevator speech and make it sound natural. Okay. You're able to give that little 30-second, and I say 30-second, maybe a minute. No, make it 30 seconds. Elevator speech, and where you're telling people what you do and you don't sound like a robot. Okay. You're adding some energy to it, some excitement. Why? Because it's coming out of your mind and it's connecting to you. When I was in real estate, I fell in love with my product. I learned what I needed to learn. It was second nature to me. Okay. And every single business I've ever been in, it became second nature to me. Okay. I fell in love with the product. I learned the system. And they could ask me anything about it. And so eventually I embodied that business. And so when I embodied that business, you have to be the business. Okay. There's a movie that says be the ball. I think it's Caddyshack. And so you have to become that. And so when you're so attached to that business like that, or connected, I should say, not necessarily attached, but connected, that business is a part of you because you believe in it so much. So it's going to be a lot easier for you to connect with customers. As a matter of fact, there'll be times when you're not even looking for a prospect or a customer or a client of any kind, and then they just show up. Okay, because you're in a certain area, or you're just out and about, and you just happen to be talking, and a person goes, "Wow, that's what I was looking for," because you know exactly who you're looking for, and you're going to carry yourself as such, and you're going to be the kind of person who matches the kind of customer that you're looking for. And so when you do that, now it becomes a lot easier. Now, here's a little caveat that I want you to consider. There's nothing, most people say, well, I want high-end clients. There's nothing wrong with having high-end clients. There's nothing wrong with desiring to, serve the lifestyle of the rich and famous. There's nothing wrong with any of that. However, you must become that. No, do you have to be super rich? No, but you have to carry yourself in a manner that exudes confidence, in a manner that exudes knowledge. You have to be willing to go above and beyond because, sometimes they require a lot. And you have to be willing to do that. And I met people like that in various businesses who said, well, I want to work with this customer because they have lots of money, or this is my target market. And you think $1 and they're thinking $1,000. You can't be a $1 thinker and go and work with $1,000 customer. So we're talking about $1,000 every 10 minutes here. Okay. So you have to pay attention to what's going on in your mindset. A lot of people want to work with customers that are wealthy because they see the customer as the opportunity for them to make more money. The key to selling is for you to understand that you are there to serve. And so if you're going to, even if you're working with someone, the upscale customers, it's not about you becoming this upscale, or it's not about you working with this upscale customer just because you want their money. It's about you becoming someone who an upscale customer would want to do business with. And so this is the importance of actually writing out the characteristics and the traits and deciding what kind of customer you want to deal with. You can deal with upscale customers. You can deal with middle class. You can deal with anyone who's not middle class. I don't believe in saying things like lower class and that kind of thing. Not my kind of thing. But you can deal with people who don't have as much money. You can deal with any one of them. Okay. But you need to understand that you have to match that person. Okay. And does that mean, okay, so if I deal with someone that doesn't have a lot of money, but they can afford what I'm selling, am I going to make money? Yes, you can make lots of money. It just means that you can relate to that person. And so when you can relate to them, if they have the money and they can afford your product or service, but you can relate to them, you just have to sell a lot more. But the beautiful part is actually there are a lot more people who don't have upscale people money. There's a lot more of them. Okay, so you can relate to them and they'll send you referral after referral because you're going to be good to them. Listen, in sales, people are people in terms of how you treat them. So if you're dealing with an upscale person, you need to treat them the way they like being treated. If you're dealing with a person who's not so much upscale, you still give them that respect and you treat them with quality service. So with that being said, to wrap this up in a nutshell, how you think about your sales, how you think about your business, sales is mental. You need to see yourself as the ultimate salesperson. You need to see yourself as the ultimate service salesperson. Okay, first salesperson and ultimate, where how can you provide the quality service? Doesn't matter what your prospect's income is. What matters is which income bracket will you be serving. That's what matters. And then you need to center your sales around that. And so when you do that, you're going to make a lot of money. I'm going to give you an example. It's not the best, but it works. We don't have as many here in Jacksonville as we used to because it's against the law for the pandering and all of that, and where they're standing on the side of the highway and holding up their signs. And this was several years ago, where they did a kind of an expose. And they showed that some of the people that were standing along the highway asking for money, that those people were actually richer than the people they were getting money from, because they would kind of dress a little ragged, hold up their sign, and they collect money. It's a numbers game. And so when, they're collecting, at the end of the day, they've collected a lot of money, and instead of going home to a shack, they go home to a palace. So why am I sharing this? I'm using this as an example to explain to you, and certainly I'm not comparing you to that type of person, but that's why I said it's not a good example, but it is a good example. Okay. So it's not, but it is. So it's because, they start out getting $1. People drive by $2. I can remember once I was riding with a friend of mine, actually was a customer of mine in real estate. He gave the guy $50, and I started to think, wow, these guys get a lot of money. And so at the end of the day, they take all of that money and they probably grow it, and then they come back for more. And the thing is, I learned to start looking at things like their fingernails, what kind of shoes they were wearing, and these kinds of things. And those things don't lie. So if they're wearing a kind of a fancy watch, or their nails are well groomed and things like that, you can kind of tell. But where I'm going with this is they collected a little bit of money from a lot of people, and they ended up probably being wealthier than a lot of us. So it's not about you just going straight to the top and saying, I'm going to work with upscale customers. It is about you finding your niche, where you think you belong, the kind of customer that you want to connect to, the kind of customer you want to serve, and serve a lot of them, whether they're upscale or not. And by upscale, I'm talking whether they have lots and lots of money. Okay. So millionaires and above. So it's not about that. Okay. So one of when I made money in real estate, I didn't start out with like the high end customers. That's not how I started out. I started out with customers that didn't have a lot of money. And I was able to help them get into homes. And of course, it kind of snowballed from there, got lots of referrals. So when I talk about this, I know what I'm talking about. My sales were easier and they were consistent, and they were easier because that group that I was working with was a group that I decided that I wanted to work with, number one, and number two, that I would give them the best service possible. And as a result, they kept sending me referrals, and my sales were easier and my sales were consistent. Why were they easier? Because the people that came to me trusted me, because they were referred by someone else. And you'd be surprised at some of the referrals I got, but these were people who could actually buy. Okay. And these are people who had homes that they wanted me to sell for them. So with that being said, you guys, I hope you kind of get a picture as to what you need to do. Listen, whatever you put into your business, that's what you're going to get out. But your mindset has to have some kind of picture as to where you're going, what you want that business to look like, how much money you want to make, and what kind of customers you're going to serve in order to make the kind of money that you desire to make. So with that being said, that's all I have for you guys on this Thriving Thursday. We will talk more in the coming days. In the meantime, I want you guys to do life with power, because you're built by design to win. So go out and do your customer profile sheet or prospect profile sheet and make lots of sales.